Okay, so you're clearly interested in data analytics, as am I. So what next? How are you going to learn the technical knowledge, the practical and human skills valued by industry employers?
Data analytics is so exciting in this new digital economy because effectively data empowers the way businesses make decisions. Top schooling is key. Academic qualifications will always be taken into consideration.
LSE's data analysis teaching is undertaken by world-class faculty who are passionate about building models to enable us to make better decisions. Combining the academic prestige of the LSE with the real-world industry exposure of Fourth Rev allows us to blend these components to bring you this innovative career accelerator such that you'll be able to make a real impact in your new job on day one.
What is the outcome and what does it mean when you've succeeded?
We're going to make your customer experience better and we're only using your data for that.
Doing a career accelerator with your current experience that you have and the motivation you have, you will be able to make an impact like no one else.
There's so many different ways that you can visualize data, but the important part is what's the story that it's telling, so then you can take the action and get the value.
When assessing what school that you're going to pick, that you pick one with a strong affiliation to the economic market in which it's respected. I think LSE definitely is that type of school that we would look at.
I really urge you to join our Career Accelerator. Invest in yourself, invest in future-proofing your skill set. And if you do, you will maximize your chance of success, and then the sky very much is the limit. Okay, well, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, and a welcome to this second in a webinar series of events looking at careers in the data sphere. So my name is Dr. James Abdi from the London School of Economics. In the meantime, I would invite all of our wonderful attendees to perhaps do a quick shout out in the chat window of Zoom to tell us where in the world you are from. And I am anticipating that you are spanning numerous time zones. So I'll be hosting and chairing today's webinar session. So I'll just perhaps begin with a brief introduction of myself. So my day job is as a lecturer in statistics at the London School of Economics and Political Science. And I've been teaching students for many years now. And clearly once COVID struck, this has really sort of forced an acceleration really for most people around the world to move more of their lives online. And indeed, education has not been any exception to that. And so in recent months and years, I've been working heavily on the development of LSE's online educational provision. Indeed, this is sort of part of one of our sort of mission statements in trying to maximize global impact and to be as inclusive as possible in allowing students and such that there should be no geographical barriers to access LSE educational provision. And indeed, in the online education sector, we've been pioneering numerous programs, and indeed the latest one, which is from which this seminar series is trying to create a bit of a buzz about, is something called a data analytics career accelerator. So this is a new type of program for the LSE, and this is being developed in collaboration with our online educational company Fourth Rev, such that the LSE, which is one of the world's leading social science universities, provide sort of the academic direction of this career accelerator, while the Fourth Rev team focuses specifically on equipping students to excel in high growth digital careers. So through this collaboration, LSE's sort of expertise in teaching and research is paired and combined with the detailed industry insight from various technology leaders and employers in order to deliver practical outcomes that align with the real needs of jobs in the digital economy. Now, of course, the workplace has forever been changing, but I think the pandemic has created this sense of accelerated change in the workplace. So by combining the quality and the rigor of university education with the best of careers-based sort of boot camp learning, the Career Accelerator Learning Model aims to ensure students are equipped with this sort of holistic blend of the technical, business, but also very importantly, the human skills required to really thrive in the digital economy. So as a little soft sales pitch, if you'd like to find out more about our Data Analytics Career Accelerator, by magic, there should be a link appearing in the chat now. So on to the proceedings of today. So indeed, once again, a very warm welcome to this event. In terms of our sort of agenda and format for the session, we have a couple of excellent panelists joining us, and I will introduce them momentarily. After our introductions, we will then move into a dialogue with our panelists. Thereafter, it will be your opportunity to ask questions of our panelists. So I'm sure many of you are Zoom experts by this stage, and any questions for our panelists, please do enter them in the Zoom Q&A function rather than at the chat. That is open as of now, so at any point in time, do raise any questions there. Feel free to upvote the questions of your peers, and then questions which surface to the top will feature heavily in our Q&A segment. So on to the introduction of our two panelists. So I'm delighted that we have Evgenia Monogyiou with us, and also Orlando Ruiz. Sadly, I am physically unable to roll my R's. That's the best I can do of the pronunciation of Orlando's surname. Now, they come from sort of different sectors. So Evgenia has been working for many years in the data science sector, and Orlando can bring in great insights to this discussion from the recruitment perspective. So I will invite each panelist to briefly introduce themselves in just a moment, including a fun question. So I always like to have this sort of icebreaker to show the human side of people who engage in sort of professional webinars such as this. So I had a little thought for my fun question, and I decided to go for the following, such that if you were to sing karaoke, either voluntarily or involuntarily, which song would you pick and why? So if I may, can I invite Evgenia to perhaps go first to give a brief introduction?
Hi, hello, my name is Evgenia, and I have been working for many years with data, basically. Started with signal processing, so the more theoretical side of things, then into integration, mainly with telco, and then into data science in healthcare and in telco. So yeah, lots of data for many, many years.
And if you were to sing in karaoke, what would be your choice of song?
Well, the thing is, because I was always the girl with the lower voice at school, I was told that I would embarrass myself anyway, but I shouldn't go for anything other than, for example, My Way, Sinatra, because
a classic.
Because I wouldn't be lousy anyway, but at least, you know, choose a singer that kind of has a deep voice. So yeah, I don't know if that was meant to be a compliment or.
Well, I suppose your career trajectory to date, has that been done your way?
I think I made the right choice.
Very good, a very good choice. Thank you very much. And Orlando.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, nice to meet you. Nice to see you here on this webinar. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Orlando, last name Ruiz, as everyone says it here on the UK. I'm really glad to join this webinar today. In terms of my background, I've been working on the data and analytics space for not only London, but also within markets such as Europe, south of Europe, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Malta. So yeah, joined Walter so about 2 years, and I've been working the London market for 2 years now, and definitely it has changed in the last couple of years quite drastically. And yeah, this conversation couldn't be more appropriate today.
And everyone's dying to know what would be your karaoke choice.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I would say probably something that brings the house down. I think one that I like, it's I Will Go On. I know it's a fun one, but yeah, I think I'll go for that one.
Okay, thank you very much. And I suppose as sort of moderator's prerogative, I should offer my karaoke choice too. And well, I will draw on actual personal experience when I was roped into karaoke against my will, and the song which was playing was Fame, and the I Want to Live Forever. And I did do the dance and moves as well, but that's not, there is video evidence, but that's not for public consumption. Okay, thank you very much, panelists, for the introduction. And now, as sort of good data scientists, we love data, and often we like to collect data. So I have a small activity for our attendees, in that there is a poll question which should be flashing up on your screens now. So I just invite you very briefly to pick your preferred option there. And indeed, I think the responses to this poll question will perhaps lead into our first question in our panel discussion. So indeed, in terms of the motivation for that poll question, I suspect of the attendees here, some may already be working in the data sphere, others looking to perhaps move into this sector. So this is somewhat perhaps aspirational about if you had a free choice of the for your career sector, where it would be. Okay, we should be seeing the results of the poll on screen any moment now. There we go. Interesting. So we see a distribution, as one anticipated when there are multiple possible responses, of sectors. The number one position, but only marginally, is the banking and finance. Okay, Orlando, if I may perhaps begin with you. Seeing these results, these are live, so we had no idea what was going to come up. Does this surprise you? And in terms of recruitment matters, are you seeing an increase in interest for talent in the data analytics, data science sphere, in particular sectors?
Yes, definitely. So it doesn't surprise me, to be fair, because if we think about the early ages of data, the first ones that have been collecting data and using it to some extent, it has been the financial industry. So I guess that's not a big surprise, but it has been changing lately. Like I said, a lot of companies and a lot of even large banks have been changing from legacy systems onto more real-time and accessible data in order to make decisions faster. So it has shifted, it has changed, and yeah, I think it doesn't surprise me, although there are other industries that are applying as well the usage of data. They have seen how valuable it is, and yeah, it's growing across all industries, and that's the beauty of it.
Thank you very much. Interesting. I did deliberately choose agriculture to feature, and no one went for that. But I'm just thinking about some of the challenges that the world faces in the decades ahead. Obviously, climate change been in the news recently with the COP26, but also being able to feed the world, and perhaps data-driven innovations in that agriculture sector. Maybe not an obvious choice of sector for a data-driven career, but perhaps one to bear in mind. Evgenia, if I may bring you in now, so perhaps linking to the theme of today's webinar session about the data day to day. So from your work experience, is there such a thing as a typical day in your role? If so, what does that typical day look like? If days are highly variable, in what sense can they vary?
Actually, they are not really variable. I think there is a hype around the work in data, and everyone thinks that your typical day is, you make an amazing discovery, you create this amazing feature and you get a result of 95% accuracy. No, that's not the case. So most of my time is spent in trying to understand the problem. So the problem, not in the sense that it's always an issue, but it's like the problem statement, and talking a lot with the stakeholders, the client or whoever else, and trying to understand how to create the hypothesis that I will be working on. That's like 80% of the success. If you frame the problem correctly, then that's your 80% of the success. And then a lot of data wrangling. So trying to understand the quality of the data, whether they are linked correctly, what, like how much value do I see initially in that data, whether I can ask for different types of data and what that type would be. So it's a lot of data exploration. And that's why I wanted to say I saw the results in the poll. So agriculture, no one went for that, but actually it's very, very interesting. And it can be, and it can be actually more satisfying, for example, than working with healthcare from experience, or pharmaceuticals that I see is lower than healthcare. So the difference when you're actually working with the data is you go into healthcare and the data quality is very poor. And because nobody started collecting data, thinking data science when they started with hospitals, you can get much better quality data with pharmaceuticals for obvious reasons, or agriculture even. So you could actually have an easier day or a more satisfying result working with agriculture rather than, for example, healthcare. So that's pretty much most of the days. And then the typical day after that is finished is mostly feature wrangling and thinking about evaluating the models, that sort of thing.
Just to pick up on that point about data wrangling, you mentioned a great phrase. And for those not familiar with the term, think of it more perhaps as like data preparation.
Yeah.
And could you perhaps just try and maybe quantify sort of the amount of time that might be spent on that data wrangling exercise? So one thing I always think of is the 80-20 rules, or the Pareto principle. 80% of your time doing something for perhaps 20% of the value. Would that be about right in terms of sort of the data wrangling versus getting some exciting results?
Yeah, especially, so the difference with when I started with machine learning, basically, or statistics, back in the day, it wasn't, data science became an industry term more so than an academic term. So back then, you would spend also a lot of time trying to code the models, because you might need like lots and lots of lines of code to just build a graph for an image, for example. Now there's so many libraries that it's fast, so it allows you to understand the data better, to have more time to explore the data because you gain time for that. But then there is a trade-off, because in all which people don't think about that, I think, most of the times. So yes, it's great that you have many libraries, and it's really helping a lot. But then if you don't understand the basics, you can't really evaluate. You will spend more time evaluating what you've done, basically, or trying to understand, because different implementation have different problems, different bugs, and all of that sort. So there is a time trade-off there. But at the end, using what is available right now, the 80-20 is pretty much correct.
I'm just having an eye on the chat, and I see the love emoji for the Pareto principle there. So good shout out for that one. Orlando, if I may come to you next. So in terms of, we've been looking there about the variation in sectors that people may pursue a career in. Now I'd like to consider more about the variation in levels. So if we're thinking perhaps like an entry level position versus intermediate or something more senior. So in matters of, hiring and recruitment, what are employers sort of broadly looking for at these different levels?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and probably we could debate for this for quite some time, because I think that it will depend on the requirements. So jobs might be very, very different depending on the industry or depending on the approach of the company, whether it is more business focus or if it's more of focusing on a commercial acumen. But what is common to all these positions once you enter into this data world, whether it's data analytics or data science, is that you need to be able to understand the business question, as Evgenia mentioned. So being able to understand and to translate the business problem into a technical requirement, it's quite key for any business. Whether you're a data analyst, whether you're a data scientist, you need to be able to understand that in order to know what data to capture, how you're going to be able to do that, what kind of KPIs you're going to monitor. So in terms of translating this into technical requirements, so one of the main things is the basic skills they're gonna be looking for are perhaps SQL, being able to query data, being able to work with databases, and be able to gather this information, this data, in order to use the data to use a model, or just to use a visualization or an analytics tool. It's key to understanding that once you gather the problem and gather the data, what most companies are looking for, it's somebody who's going to be able not only to make a visualization, because that's there are many tools that you can pretty much automate that from an engineering perspective, but they rather look for somebody who's going to be able to translate those technical findings into actionable insights, be able to do some storytelling. So obviously, when it comes to technical perspective, you can use the basic ones, which are SQL, maybe a coding language, Python, R. And then there are many different analytics and visualization tools, and that depends pretty much on the business. But being able to understand the basics and how to query data and how to use data, that's one of the main things that that employers are going to be looking for. Then it will depend on what type of business and what type of industry, and exactly what kind of technical tool stacks the companies are going to be looking for. We can mention some of the common ones, obviously, in terms of visualizations. We can talk about Tableau, Power BI, ClickView, even legacy systems such as, I don't know, even Excel and VBA. But yeah, I think it's more key to have the fundamentals. And for example, when you look into more data science, a little bit aside from analytics, like Evgenia mentioned, it's key to understand the fundamentals. So if you're going for a data scientist job, you need to be able to understand the logic, the math behind those that coding, those algorithms, because yes, there are many libraries, as Evgenia mentioned, but being able to understand and know which particular model, which particular code you're going to be using for, because you can be going the long way around it and then wasting a lot of time for the business and for your project, when you could have done that in a much more easier way. So understanding the fundamentals, it's quite key. So obviously having some sort of exposure or degree to understanding the math, the science behind these algorithms, whether it is mathematics, statistics, physics, it's quite key. So just having those fundamental skills, it's very key, and that's what most of the companies are going to be looking for. And at any level, whether it's entry level or senior level or a principal level, the skill sets need to be there. And then in terms of different levels of experience, that's going to be driven by how much exposure, how much have you delivered in the past. And that's what they're going to be looking at.
Hi, I think James has unfortunately jumped off of the call. My name is Candice. I'm just in the background here. Thanks, Orlando, for that answer. I think it was very, very insightful. I think what would be interesting just to follow up from that, I'm really curious to know, like, we spoke a little bit about the different fields and the different areas where data skills are really important. Do you have an idea of, like, if someone is looking to add data to their skill set, what kind of like fields are now more in demand or looking for more data scientists or data analysts?
Yes, definitely. So since COVID, there has been an urge for many businesses to being able to use data to make decisions faster. So what COVID exposed is that you need to be able to make decisions in a fast way, and these decisions, the best way to make them, it's based on data. So a lot of businesses that were working with legacy systems, and that includes pretty much every industry, financial services, especially insurance. There are many industries that are moving from those legacy systems in order to have a more dynamic approach. Also, in terms of, for example, working remotely, that has exposed the fact that a lot of companies needed to be mobile, and they had to kind of like take all those systems, all that data, all that information onto a cloud-based platform to be able to access it from anywhere, rather than just being on office space and only having access through those servers at the office. So there's many areas that have been thriving in the last year and a half, 2 years, and I think it's mostly companies. And if you look at it, like right after the pandemic, most of the requirements were on the back end, on the engineering side of things, whether companies were trying to organize those databases, gather data, just kind of like that initial work. And then now, since I would say probably Q2, Q3 this year, pretty much all the focus has shifted. And now a lot of companies are looking into hiring people with analytic skills, people who are going to be able to leverage all that work, all that data that they have gathered, and just being able to generate those actionable insights, as we mentioned before, just kind of analyze the data and being able to make those actionable insights, just being able to help the business to make those decisions now. So in terms of demand, it shifts, and it's an ever evolving industry, and it's the kind of industry where you need to be up to date. So what 3-4 years ago, for example, if you look into Oracle systems or companies working with Excel and VBA, that kind of has changed to be a more legacy systems, and now it's shifting to a more cloud-based kind of environment. So that's more or less what companies are looking for. So it changed with the time, but definitely it's a very in-demand industry at this point in time. So everyone is requiring some sort of data skills, whether your role is more business or commercial focused, but they need to have that exposure to data at some point.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually quite interested, Evgenia, maybe you can tell us, like, it's quite difficult for especially someone who isn't very well versed in this industry to know, like, what is the difference between data science and data analytics? Could you practically explain that, like on a day-to-day? What is the actual difference?
So I guess data science is an umbrella term. So it refers to more of a generalist person with some solid theoretical or engineering background. Data analytics, although you can use the term kind of interchangeably, usually refers to reporting. meaning usually refers to practices that they are trying to expose and visualize how the data is already connected in the existing systems. So it takes what is there in a schema, in lots of tables and relationships between tables, and it visualizes it and it presents it to the business people in a way that they can understand what the hidden meaning is, basically. So it gives you a good representation of what is there already. And that's why it's mostly about reporting and visualization. But it doesn't mean basic advanced analytics is pretty much data science, right? The difference with data science is it includes, because reporting is usually your first steps, trying to understand what is there, first of all. So data science kind of includes the next step, which is try to find patterns in the data, but patterns that are not immediately revealed by the existing relationships, so just by the schemas or whatever is there already. So patterns that can be identified using statistics or machine learning. And I think that's where the trend is, because there are big industries that have done reporting, have a lot of data, but they never bothered to think of their data as an asset. They never thought that this data would be an asset someday. They thought this data is basically keeping records for financial reasons or for legal reasons. And they've reached the point where they have produced so many products to the market that pretty much they share the same product design with every other company in their industry. So telcos, for example, how many types of products can you really build on a telco basis? Internet with voice only, SMS, well, that's like the number is specific. So in order to be, the usual problem is you have less capital and you need to be more competitive. And the only thing that you have other than capital is your data. And that's what they're trying to do now, use their data to their advantage. And there is 2 steps there. Do the analytics to understand what is there exactly, and also help with data quality issues. And then try to do that extra little thing, that extra edge to what you're doing by understanding what might be there, but it's not easily accessible by a human being at first glance.
Thank you so much. That made a lot of sense. Orlando, yes, your hand's up. Would you like to add to that?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I wanted to add, Evgenia just made a very clear explanation. One way that many companies see it is that analytics is the first initial attempt to leverage that data, to use that data. And data science, it's like Evgenia said, that next step. One way that they see it, it's that analytics is a way to understand what has happened based on the data that they have. And data science, it's a way to predict what could happen in the future. So that's kind of the difference. And when it comes to data science, as Evgenia said, it's a very general job title, but over the last couple of years, it has been just creating more very niche areas, very specific areas of focuses, where they can all be data scientists, but they are focused on a very specific skill sets. So you could think, for example, a data scientist who's specialized on recommender systems, or a data scientist who's more focused on consumer analytics, or a data scientist who's more focused on signal processing or reinforcement learning. So there are many different areas, and there is an endless possibilities within data science. Whereas analytics it's more focused on understanding what's happened, reporting, and just providing data to the business. So that's kind of like how the companies see it. Although you might have companies that are going to be looking for it let's say, a data scientist, but in reality, what they want is somebody who's going to be working on analytics, and it's not very data science focused. So there is a little bit of still a little bit of confusion within the industries and within businesses on how they define or how they name each job title. But the reality is, it depends on the tasks. You can define a position, but there's still a little bit of confusion in terms of job titles.
That's very interesting. I suppose a lot of people, especially because it's quite a new field, they're still defining the differences and the niches. And I just wanted to add to that before we jump into the Q&A. I wanted to ask, how does someone applying for a job in analytics or data scientists or data science, sorry, how do they demonstrate that they have the skills necessary? Do you have an idea of that, Orlando?
Sure. Again, it will depend on what the approach is for that specific business, but some of the best ways to kind of like showcase your skill sets. Obviously, it's going to be through not only through your CV, but through your social media. It could be LinkedIn, etc. It depends on what kind of industry, but I would say that you need to first obviously showcase what you have done, what you have achieved. In terms of your qualifications, it could be your academic qualifications, whether you have done trainings, but it's key to understand, for example, if you have done a course or a training or an academic qualification, what exactly you did there. Just employers are looking to understand, because many of them, especially when you're looking to large organizations, they're going to base their decision on putting you forward based on what they can see on the CV. So time is really valuable. So you're talking about you're going to have to arrange interviews to stakeholders, etc. So it's really key for them to understand what this person has done, what exposure have they had, and is that what we're looking for? It's that valuable. So showcasing your skills, and when I say showcase your skills, whether it's qualifications or whether it is exposure or within a past job or your current job, just be sure to expose what you have achieved, what you have been exposed to. That's going to be quite key. In terms of the specific skill sets, obviously we could talk about I don't know, trend technologies and buzzwords and all these, that they are only good to filter your CV when they're looking for it, but in reality that doesn't compensate the exposure and the knowledge that you have. So, but it's key to mention as well that when you're showcasing, when you're acquiring these data or these technology skills to add to your experience, whether you're looking to move from a more business role and have that data exposure, it's key to expose your strengths as well. So whether your strengths are more into a commercial role or more into, like, if you have experience as a product manager or as a project manager, it is important because many companies, they might have already a team that focuses on technology. They might have a data analyst, data engineers, but they're looking for that transition or that person who can be the link between the business and the technical skills. So and the technical department. So that becomes really critical, that you expose also your experience within the business and how you can link that to the data team. What exposure, how do you understand data? So that's mainly what's gonna highlight your profile to employers.
Amazing, thank you. Welcome back, James. I was just
my apologies. We are now back. proves I am superfluous, because I'm sure the show carried on.
It did, but we are actually about to head into the Q&A section. So I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A below, or you can upvote any of the questions. James, are you happy to take over from here?
Yes, I am. However, could you make me a co-host, because I can't see any of the Q&A, and I know there were some posted at the start.
Okay, cool. We'll do. Okay, actually, I'll ask the first question while I find that. Evgenia, the main question here that we have that's upvoted is, how important is it to build a portfolio of evidence as I move into a data analyst role?
I think very important, not just, it's much easier for your potential employer to see what you're doing and, you know, your way of thinking and your skills. That's very easy if you're building a portfolio, but also it's just the thought of how you will be building this portfolio and what you want to include makes your you're thinking more diverse. And when you have that interview, it will show. Like if there is someone on the other end that actually knows what they're doing and they are interviewing you, it will come through very, very clearly. And that's what you want. You don't want to go alone. What wins everywhere from Kaggle to, the industries and stuff, it's not just one person, it's the team. And it's a team with complementary skill sets. So it cuts both ways. You want to be able to show what you have achieved with this portfolio, but also understand how the other person thinks and what kind of team you're going in. So I think it's very useful.
Okay, thank you. Now, clearly, I missed a few minutes, so it's a possibility I may be asking you a question which was already covered. But next one I have up is in terms of this portfolio question, what would you be looking for in a good portfolio project?
For a data scientist, more so than data analytics, is diverse skills, meaning because the data scientist, unless the role is very, very specific, we need an image processing specialist, for example. It's more about a generalist. So they need to have a solid background, but also they need to have tried different things. So try to understand different problems. So I would say if it's data science, would be more like doing a little bit of traditional machine learning, for example, and NLP and the image processing. And if it's analytics, it's like not just using SQL, but coding as well, and perhaps different types of data. That's what I would be aiming at.
Another question. So in terms of equipping oneself with a skill set, would you advocate that it's more important to specialize or to gain a sort of more generic skill set? I mean, arguably, perhaps you want the best of both worlds, but would it be more important to prioritize sort of a little bit of knowledge in different areas, or to specialize in a particular area?
So in my opinion, so industry needs both. You can't have the same thing in one person. And, I will never be, my background is in image processing, right? But my academic background is in image processing, not my work background. But I'm definitely not up to date, just as is a 23-year-old that is coming out of the university now. That's not the value that I will bring. And it's impossible for them to have the experience that I have, and for me to keep up to date with every discipline and all its evolution through 20 years now, okay? So both are equally important. It has with what, in a team, you need to have both. Otherwise, just having one person, for me, it's like a safe road to failure eventually. For the person that wants to follow that career, it depends on what they want to do, how much exposure they want to have to the with the client, how much they feel comfortable trying to tackle different problems, and or they prefer to focus on a specific problem and optimize it, you know, as much as it is possible. But for the industry, for me, both are very, very important if you want a really good result.
Now, I know in the first part of our panel discussion, there was reference to sort of knowing sort of what questions to ask of your data, being able to diagnose the business problem. And I suppose a lot of people, when they are faced with a data challenge, it's a difficulty about knowing how to get started, or where to start, or what questions to ask of your data, or hypotheses to test. So Orlando, perhaps in terms of perhaps some of these sort of thinking skills, communication skills for solving problems, how important do you see that in the recruitment?
Very.
Yes, very, as Evgenia said, very important. Communication skills, if you see all we have been discussing throughout the webinar today, the main constant is being able to translate, being able to communicate, understanding the business needs, and all these comes through communication. So communication skills are as important as having any technical experience, technical background. So you could be very, very good or you could be a specialist within a specific area, but if you don't have the communication skills, you're not going to be able to bring that value. So it's very key.
Okay, I have a question with regards to sort of changing sector. So let's say someone is coming in perhaps from a science background, or other sort of non-business sector. How easy do you feel it is to make that transition across sectors?
So it obviously will depend on what you're looking to do within your career path. It's not always easy, but it's not impossible. So you need to define, you need to be able to know what do you want to do, what you want to focus. As we were talking about before, general skills, or being more specific on a particular area, more target driven. So it depends on what you want to do. You could become, I don't know, a very specialized visualization type of analyst, and you focus mainly on visualization, but you need to make sure, for example, that you are up to date, and you run the risk of becoming obsolete at some point if you don't continue to train yourself. So, but in terms of changing, for example, if you're into, let's say, I don't know, a project manager, or you're working in a different business vertical, I think there's always a way to make that transition gradually. Having exposure to data is becoming key to pretty much every business, and that kind of applies to pretty much every business vertical within a company. So whether you're working in marketing, data is going to be important. Whether you're working in HR, so data is becoming important in pretty much every vertical. And making that transition, there are always going to be companies who are making that transition, who are implementing that data, or who are looking just for that link between a very developed technical division and the business vertical. It could be, like I said, marketing, HR, financial. So making that transition will depend on how much into data you want to get involved. If you don't have a technical background, obviously you will need to retrain, you will need to acquire these skills, and it is possible to make the transition, but you need to get the exposure, you need to get the skills. And then once you have those skills, your background your experience, your previous experience will become very valuable as well to any business.
I'd say it depends on how much free time. So I agree with Orlando. It depends on how much free time you have, because it's not about the degree so much, unless you are looking into very, very specialist roles. It's about the efforts. So you can't work around the effort. If you didn't spend it getting a relevant degree, then you will spend, like, you make that effort in your free time to read and practice. It's not something that can be taught just by, you know, having someone to tell you things. You need to read, and then you need to practice, and you need to make a lot of mistakes. There is no other way. And that's why someone cannot be immediately a very good generalist, because they need to make the mistakes when they are actually handling data to be able to ask the right questions afterwards. So it's a gradual thing for sure, and it takes a lot of practice.
We have about another 5 minutes left for this Q&A segment, and I'm just skim reading the questions which have come in. I see a sort of recurring theme about your people joining this session. You're already in employment, but in your non-data based careers. And in terms of perhaps this sort of teamwork element and the importance of human skills and being able to work with other individuals, to what extent do you feel it would be advantageous to have a team from a diverse range of backgrounds, so from different sectors, such that when you have like a fresh pair of eyes looking at a problem, they could perhaps be looking at it from a very different perspective? So do you feel it would be even a net positive to be moving into a data-driven career coming from a very different kind of background, given how you sort of view the world and how you may approach solving problems?
It's the most important thing in my head. It's never a one-person game. And if you go through an engineering degree, you learn that very fast, because there is no way someone can know everything that is needed to get a great result. And there's no way anyone can be equally good in all the disciplines and all the different aspects. So the complementary skill set that includes business, for example, having someone in the team that has worked in business products in a couple of industries, not just one, is actually quite, and they can communicate on a basic level in terms of technical stuff. That's like priceless to have someone like that. But then you also need the nerd like that, because there's no, so for me those are the winning teams, and people grow within those teams much faster. They can transition into other into other areas much faster.
Orlando, for your sort of dream team of skill sets?
Yes, well, in terms of dream team of skill sets, I would say just have the main thing is to acquire the fundamental skills. Just being able to train on a particular tool, it's not automatically going to make you a good data analyst or a good data scientist. So I think it's more about having the fundamental skills and going from there. It's going to depend on how much you want it at the end of the day, because if you're looking to make a transition, you can find yourself comfortable in that intersection between the business, within the business vertical and the data team, and you might find that that's the right job for you. And there's people who want to get more deep into it, who wants to have a complete career change and go from their, I don't know, their business role into a data analyst role, and they want to make that full transition. In that case, I would say, obviously, being able to understand data, be able to query data and work with databases, that's key. As Evgenia mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar, a lot of time is spent working and modeling that data and just making sure that that data quality is there. But like I said, every company, every role, it's its own requirement, it's its own world. You might have a company that have a very proficient team that works on data quality, and then you can focus your skill sets mainly on that or on any particular area. So like I mentioned, data analytics, data science, it's becoming very specialized, and there are many niche areas. But I would say, in terms of if you were thinking about your dream skill sets, obviously somebody is going to be able to understand and query and work very well with SQL, who's going to have enough coding skills with a coding language, whether it's Python or R or any other language. And we're talking about data analytics, more focused on data analytics, data science. I would say Python, R, and then from there, obviously, if you have the fundamentals, the world's your nut. You can learn as many technologies. There are infinite amount of technologies out there, but it will depend on what you want to focus.
Okay, I'm very conscious of time. If I may, just to ask one final question, which will hopefully include paraphrasing several which have been asked. So there's a clear trend from the questions of our attendees that many are wanting to get into this field from a different starting point. So perhaps briefly, what would be your sort of recommendation for how to get started to make that transition from their current role? I see some people in the healthcare sector. So I think most people are just sort of feel very daunted and overwhelmed about what to do first. So what would perhaps be your sort of top tip, as it were, for making or to start that transition into a sort of data analytics or data science career?
I'd say, first of all, they need to be somehow exposed to data, meaning they need to practice. So they need to have some access to data so that they can practice. And I guess it will take maybe a month researching, lots of Googling. There's so many suggestions, even for big universities. There's so many talks and suggestions on a path, depending on what you want to do. So there are paths that start with getting an online degree or some sort. There are other paths that start with training courses, much smaller training courses. So I would say, first of all, do that research. It will take at least a month, and crystallize what looks interesting to you and what looks doable to you, and then start to focus on the specific thing. But it's like there's a lot of material online these days.
Orlando, do you have a tip for where to get started?
Yeah, no, exactly. I would say it just make sure that you know what you want to do and you have understanding of what that will imply in terms of that data exposure. So yeah, to take the first step, just to make sure that you take the first step in the right direction, make sure that you know what path you're going to take. As Evgenia said, do your research, find out what you want to be exposed to, and based on that, see what skill sets are required for that particular area. If we're talking about data analytics, for example, the training course with FortRev, we're talking about being exposed to technologies like SQL, Tableau. Those are mainly like very basic skills to jump into analytics, which is the first step to get involved into that data science. If your end goal is to be a data science, you're not going to jump and do data science right away. unless you want to go to a university and do a degree and do a complete career change. But if you want to do these progressively, you need to be exposed, as Evgenia mentioned, to data. Then start with the analytics and then keep progressing, keep training yourself, and continue to do that. There is a lot of material online in terms of being able to work with specific data sets and get exposure to that data. So yeah, just do your due diligence, find out what you want to do, and go from there.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Many thanks. So we are unbelievably at sort of the end of our allotted time for this webinar session. So I think some very wise words from Evgenia and Orlando about how to make that, how to take that first step. And indeed, I think allegedly a journey of 1,000 miles must start with a single step. But the fact that you are tuning into this webinar session, I think you've already taken that first step, and hopefully this session has given you some food for thought and hopefully some encouragement and motivation to take perhaps that second step. So I'd like to thank very much indeed Evgenia and Orlando for their time sharing their insights with us today. Indeed, well, what might that next second step be? Well, good news, there is going to be another webinar in this series coming up on the 9th of December. I believe the details should be appearing on your screen now, about filling the data skills gap. And I would say there's very much a significant skills deficit out there, in that the demand in a variety of sectors, agriculture, not to forget it as well, greatly exceeds the supply. And so in order to take perhaps the next few steps, you can consider joining that webinar, and indeed lots of research for yourselves to do online about your possible job roles, sectors maybe you hadn't thought of before. So I think the future, while it's always uncertain, I'd say it is very bright for anyone interested in pursuing a career in either data analytics, data science. Of course, it does require your time and effort. We've seen a lot about the necessity of doing the right kind of research. So once again, thank you very much for joining this session. And as perhaps a final data collection exercise, we had our little Zoom poll at the start. I believe all those attending will receive a feedback request. So please do share your feedback on this event. And clearly, as good sort of data analysts and data scientists, we always seek to improve. While perfection may never be attainable, like internet connections, we always seek to do our very best. So once again, thank you very much. Please do stay safe, stay very healthy, and hopefully we will see you at the next webinar in the series. So goodbye for now.